Good morning, everyone. Just want to get your attendance. Hi, guys. Attention. Hi, guys. I'm Chris Abate, and I'm here representing Ceramics of Italy. And we're so pleased to have you at Coverings in person in IRL. So it's really exciting to see you all here today. And I have the honor of presenting our next speaker, who's really a rock star, literally, of Coverings. We were just discussing it. I think she's been coming to the show and helping us, really helping the industry, have an educated approach to color for over 20 years. She is just a phenomenon. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit about her background. Before I start, I want to just make sure you know that there are your CEU paperwork at the back of the room. So please do grab that on the way out if that helps, and get registered for today's session. And I think you're going to really enjoy her update, and it's not Coverings without her. So it's my pleasure to tell you a little bit about her. She is a expert in color. She's been called the international color guru. She's recognized worldwide and is a prime consultant to Pantone. She's helped them and many other companies have the most educated sort of color program. Her work is felt in professional development, product development, logos and identification, brand imaging, websites, packaging, interior and exterior design, and any application where color choice is critical to the success of the product, promotion, company image, or environment. And that's everywhere, as we know. She heads the Eisman Center for Color Information and Training, and is also executive director of the Pantone Color Institute. And she's the author of 10 books on color. Both the New York Times and Fortune have named Lee as top decision maker for her work in color. She is a member of the International Forecasting Group for Pantone, View Color Planner, and develops a home forecast yearly. She heads the committee for naming Pantone's Color of the Year, which I know we're all really always looking forward to hearing. And she shares her expertise on color and design for industry in certified programs and online. So it's my pleasure to welcome Lee to the stage. Thank you.
Wow, it is so exciting to be in front of a real audience. I am so sick of Zooming. I know you probably feel the same way. And to get out there and press the flesh and actually see some of my groupies from previous years that are here and new people. And I know that color is a very valuable subject for you. So I'm going to do my best to bring you what the very latest news is about color. Obviously, that's why you're here. Now, up on the screen now, what you're seeing is the continuing education information. For those of you that are taking this for continuing ed, it's important to know that you're going to get that credit. And these are the informational slides that tell you a little bit more about that. Also want to tell you that I know that some of you are going to try to frantically take notes because there's a lot to look at. But there is a handout that is available on the Coverings app. So what I have done on that app is to highlight the 7 palettes and the 4 major colors. But it's really more important now to start out with where the colors came from. Why are we looking at the colors that we're looking at, and giving you some hints and information that you can be looking at yourself that will give you some indication of where color is going in the future. So, having said all of that, we're going to start out with the very first slide, which is based on lifestyles and work styles that, as we all know, are a dynamic state of change. More than ever before, there's a need that we call a chromatic vision, to be able to look ahead and to be able to connect, particularly with our consumers and our customers in a very personal way, enabling them to emerge from what's really been a very personally challenging time and to express the new realities that exist out there in the world of color and design. Our goal at Pantone, and as director of the Pantone Color Institute, this is a forecast that I devise for them every year that are going to help you better understand the expectations and aspirations of your customers and consumers and your clients as well. It comes from a wide diversity. You've heard me say that the last few years, that color forecasting is now more diverse than it's ever been before, because we have to acknowledge that there are different lifestyles. I'm just not one of those forecasters that gets up and says, everybody's doing contemporary, forget about traditional. That truly isn't the case, and that's why I give you 7 different palettes to look at, because they're based on different kinds of lifestyles and play styles that people have. And there are colors that match each of those moods, and we need to know more about that subject. So we're reflecting the complexity that we live in the modern world, and we're seeing everything from what we're calling the artisanal tones and quiet neutrals, or on the other hand, highly digitized, we're going to hear that word a lot, digitized vibrant hues to intensely robust shades. The future holds extremes of mood and style and color. So we're going to look first at the outstanding areas that take us where we're going, exploring new creative realities. Now, interestingly, the title of my talk in the Pantone Forecast, there's a repeated use of the E words. Among them, emerge, experience, express, and explore. And explore is especially important. These new creative realities acknowledge that our physical and digital lives are emerging in new ways. Digital design, with its vivifying effects, important word to know, stretch the limits of our imagination, opening a door to a dynamic virtual world where we can explore new color possibilities. Now, what does that have to do with the consumer, with your clients, with your customers? It means that they are more immersed in the digital world. Their expectation of what colors are going to look like, and they're going to be more knowledgeable about color from a digital standpoint. We have to stay on top of that information. So when I say we, that's including our consumers and our clients' exposure and desire for change as well. We do know that the last few years have brought about that need for change, particularly when people have been sequestered and they're living in an environment where they've seen the same things over and over again, day after day, and they feel like they want something new and fresh, and that, of course, is where color enters into it. With trends in gaming, the expanding importance of the metaverse, and the availability of NFTs, there's a rising artistic community that is feeding the fusion of art as we know it and tech-driven digital atmosphere. Immersive art continues its trajectory to more people all over the world, experiencing the exciting medium that brings new meaning and involvement to color. Now, I don't know if any of you have experienced the immersive art that's traveled around the world, but it's really amazing. And when you enter into the world of Van Gogh and you literally see those colors come to life, again, it becomes an expectation on the part of the consumer who sees those colors and says, I want my colors to be that vibrant. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that the whole world's going to turn to bright colors, but it means the intensity of the color then takes on more meaning as they are more involved in it. Here's another example of immersive color, as we see here. Real-world art, of course, is always important. Very much an influence on color trends, as just with the digitized art color that we are seeing that is more alive and pervasive. Shown here recently in MoMA in New York, and we do look at what the museums are doing, and it used to be that it was a very elite kind of thing. You know, not everybody went to museums and were influenced by the colors that they saw in the collections, but that changed, and Steve Wynn changed that here in Las Vegas. Or if you all remember at the Bellagio with those Chihuly glass pieces in the ceiling and a collection of Jackson Pollock. People lined up literally around the block to see an art collection. That was unheard of before. And that really started the whole idea of looking at the art world more seriously. Now, the artist in particular that's getting a lot of attention now is acclaimed artist and sculptor Niki de Saint-Phalle. Now, she was one of the originators of using brilliant color in art. She was one of the first to do that. She's known for her iconic packaging for La Prairie skin color and skin care, And I will say to you, particularly for the guys in the audience, what do cosmetics have to do with it? Well, of course, fashion and cosmetics are often leaders in the trends as far as where color is going. Packaging follows along with that too. It used to be that digital design, from the standpoint of designers, artistic designers, packaging wasn't high up on the scale, but now packaging is really important to look at because many of the graphic designers are very, very much into where color is going. Now, her line for La Prairie was released with the state-of-the-art retinal products that are actually made from caviar, if you can believe it, so you can imagine the price point. But the more important thing for us to look at is that intense blue that is used in her product that's getting a lot of play, a lot of publicity in the magazines, online. That intense blue that is also showing up in what these young designers are doing now because they're looking at what the designers at the top of the heap are doing. They're inspiring young artists who won, for example, this Samsung competition for the covers of their bespoke refrigerators. On the left is one called Nestled by Joanna Subaru. In the middle is Foodie by Veronica Sleifertz. And on the right is Rita Louise's Last Landscape, dramatically done in that bright shade of Santal blue. So you see it can cross over from one area of packaging into another, and it's the young artists who are paying attention to this and using it in their designs. We also know that forecasters always have to look at the entertainment world for upcoming trends. This has proved to be even more important than ever before as people have gotten accustomed to spending more time at home and looking for diversion, especially for the kids. And if you have kids, you know exactly what I'm talking about, diversion for them. Now, here we see a typical example of the kinds of colors that we generally see in kids' films. But remember, your customers sit down and watch the pictures with the kids. And as a result, they see these brilliant digitized colors being used, and they want to know where they can find colors that have this kind of intensity. We also know that even though the animated films like Paw Patrol, this one here, which is really meant for the very young kids, we always look as forecasters at the sequels. If you've heard me speak before, you've heard me say that. Because a sequel helps to prolong the life of a color trend. If we see a second movie and a third movie and they're using the same kinds of colors and there's one color that really stands out, then you know that that's going to repeat itself eventually. And you're going to see that in adult films as well. Now, something's very interesting happening in animated films and in non-animated films. And this is Timothée Chalamet, who stars in the new picture, the new Charlie and the Chocolate Factory picture, that's set for release in 2023. So again, I'm looking at what's going to be released in future as to where color directions are going. A younger Willy Wonka, it's a prequel rather than a sequel. And I think casting Timothée Chalamet, who is this hot young actor, is really an interesting direction for Willy Wonka. But look at the costuming and the sets, you will notice too. Those rich wine colors that he's wearing, and of course a chocolate brown hat, are an important part of a palette that I'm going to be referring to a little bit later. We also know that there's another film, and it's called The Wheel of Time. And this one is also having a big influence, another sequel, big form of escapism in the epic film genre. So epic films are very, very much a part of what people are watching, and a lot of them are very dark. Dark, but having some rich color that comes forth in these palettes. So this makes up a part of a palette you're going to be seeing as I move forward. This again has a sequel in the future, and then another sequel after that is planned. So it's going to elongate the trend. Of course, if any of you have watched Bridgerton, have anybody here watched Bridgerton? Okay, colors are amazing in that show, absolutely amazing. It's providing, and it's on now, I'm binge watching it, the new season of Bridgerton, because what we see is very unexpected usage of color. It's rich, what we call Regency colors, and it goes from dark to light to vibrantly bright. The costuming is astounding, and it's getting a lot of attention and being copied by many designers out there. And now for another E word, this one environmental, such as sustainability. The topic of sustainability remains top of mind for the future. And I want to give you these stats because I think they're important to know where consumers' heads are. Recent research from IBM, a very good source for research, stated 8 to 10 consumers said sustainability is important for them, and nearly 70% said they would pay a 35% premium for sustainable and environmentally friendly brands. Important stats to keep in mind. So, having looked at that, have you ever gone to a juice bar and wondered where all the garbage goes? I know every time I go into Jamba Juice, I wonder about that. In Milan, this cleverly designed oversized juice dispenser renders the rinds, which are collected, milled, dried, and mixed with a fermentation of corn, sugarcane, and potatoes that makes the biodegradable cup that she is drinking from. So it is really in motion. There is no question that sustainability remains a big, big subject. These durable, waterproof fabrications are also made from leftover fruit peels that are combined with algae and pectin that are obtained from local fruit producers and suppliers. They can be soft and malleable, as you're seeing here, or they can be woven into accessories like buttons. And I want to show you how it's also affecting interior design. The apple leather, this is literally made out of apple skins, apple cores, is being used. Again, we look at it and we think, well, that's so sci-fi, so future, but it's definitely out there. And the sustainable material is seen here in sofas that were used by Philippe Starck. Now, he's a pretty well-known high-end designer who happens to be a devout vegetarian, so he's very dedicated to the idea of using biomaterial compositions, as that they are being called. There is an explosion of interest that is being described in the media in these newer fabrications, so important to pay attention to. One of the most discussed environmental topics is wood as a renewable resource. In order to limit the destruction of the Earth's very valuable resource, there is a big movement to planting more new growth or second growth forests, allowing for younger trees to be harvested rather than deforesting the old forest. Now, that's a really important point to know, and people are paying attention to that. In upcoming years, there's going to be an even greater demand from consumers. It's already started. We've seen these doors out there. I live in Tucson. There are a lot of this kind of wood circulating out there. We know that salvageable wood and new growth wood is something that people are very, very conscious of. And it is leading to novelty in the way that wood is being treated. And I thought that these were some really good examples, both in residential, by the way, and in contract design. And here is another very interesting usage of it in the wavy wood. So again, salvageable, important, sustainability, important, and notice that the contrast of color is here as well, the very dark wood that is being used against the lighter colors in the bedding and on the wall. That is an influence that we're going to see going forward, and I'm going to talk more about it. The hardness of the wood is often counterbalanced by the pliability of reworked fabrics. Now, that's also a big deal. Inspired by fashion apparel, such as denim and other softer fabrications, that are found now, here as we see it, the denim look in the sofa. It's not a brand new look, it's been around, but it's gaining even more favor because it's reworked denim. So again, it's for a good social cause. We're seeing very expressive, multicultural boho. Now, boho is a word that's been around again for a couple of years, and it's continuing. It's not going away. What it simply means is it's kind of an eccentric, eclectic look of moods that are pulled together to make for a different kind of a look that perhaps older consumers may not be happy with, but younger people definitely are. They like a mix of features, and we're going to see a lot of that. A lot of this is bold, colorful, unconventional. This eclectic effect, two more important E words, points out the extreme we're seeing in design today. Although there's a dichotomy of moods expressed, there's an unexpected compatibility in the mix of materials and colors that finds a unique commonality. Now, having said that, we know, particularly in your industries, that there are always consumers and clients, customers, who lean to the safe neutrals. That's what they call them, the safe neutrals, and that's not going to go away. I'm not going to stand up here and say everything's going to be replaced by brilliant color. You're still going to have people who lean to the neutrals. But what do we do to make it look new so that they don't walk by that display or look on your website and say, oh, ho-hum, another neutral? And that's where the usage of how you're putting those neutrals together with other colors is important. A lot of it lies in the patterning, as you see in the wall covering here. And here again, very subtle usage of color with it, subtle pastel tones that are combined with the neutrals. And I thought this was a particularly beautiful example of that. And here we have really blatant usage of the color blue used along with the gray. So you might get the example of seeing more pastel being used, a little bit heavier with your neutrals, but that is definitely an indicator for the future. Along with that, we are seeing that pastels are being punctuated by brights as well. This overhead shot shows you that combination of both pastels and punctuation of brighter. And here is another example in the wall art. So pastels punctuated by brights. And this I thought was especially interesting. Use of pink in contract on the wall, on the ceiling, but the bold, dark contrast next to it. So we're seeing bright, light, and bold along with our pastel colors. And here we are again with a deeper dramatic color in the wall treatment. Now, I'm going to talk next about a design called Ombrade, O-M-B-R-E-D, a very, very heavy usage of this in the design world, and I think it's important to look at. It's a blended use of hues within the same color family. And this is being nudged on, again, by the beauty industry as well as the fashion industry. Here we see it in the hair treatment, seeing a lot of that, where you're seeing the colors kind of melt monochromatically one into another. That is a big trend, a big direction that we are going in. We saw it in nails, and we're also seeing in fabrications, where one piece of fabric blends from one color to another color within the same range. Here we see it in fashion, a lot of it in the fashion industry, as well as in bedding, where it doesn't necessarily have to be blocking of color, but just sort of a wavy treatment that goes through it. But it's called ombrade. These ombrade sea and sky tones take on our next E word, and that is escape. We all know about that word. We all want to escape after what's happened in the last few years. And so who wouldn't want to exhale, relax, and restore with colors that speak to those tropical themes? A little bit more semi-tropical, however, but here I wanted to show you some more examples that are playing into the colorations that escape to someplace tropical, and we are seeing it in a lot of different fabric treatments as I'm showing you here. And I couldn't resist this particular image. I mean, who wouldn't want to be there, right? Getting a massage in the water, absolutely. And look at the colors around it. I mean, those colors just instantly put you into that kind of relaxed mindset. And there are a lot of forecasters who are saying that relaxed mindset is something people, for a lot of people, is really important. But at the same time, we are seeing the brighter tones that we call intoxicating. So there's lots of different means of escape for different people. I mean, escape could mean a massage in the ocean, or it could mean having a colorful Mai Tai on a beach in Hawaii. We all have a different way of escaping. And better days ahead. Is this wonderful? That is wall art with a tree growing up behind it, and it looks to be her hair. I just thought that was a really amazing image. And a couple of more images that talk about hopeful days ahead, these vibrant tones that are profuse, lively, and emblematic of the colors that we are seeing in various applications, very bright. Now think digitized color. That's where this brightness is coming from. There are punctuation marks of color that are being seen in many variations. Again, we're seeing them in everything from residential to contract. I don't think the color on the wall is coming out quite as bright as it should be, but this is a hotel in Seattle, and it truly is a very, very bright treatment on the wall. Here's a better picture, I think, of it. And more examples of here's a mosaic used with a light diffused behind it, a beautiful example of something that looks like it's imitating digitized color. Now, as we move on to surface treatments enabled by technology, which often imitates nature, much of the research, and you've heard me say this before, on metallic surfacing comes from the auto industry. And it's not only the external part of the auto, the paint that goes on the outside, but it's also on some of the treatments that are being used on the inside of the concept cars. Now, these are concept cars. It doesn't mean they're tooling around on the freeway now, but whatever is in a concept car tells you the technology is there, and they're working with it to make it a reality. Here's another example, which I thought was amazing. This is the McLaren Artura, it's called. Much of the research, as I said, comes from the automotive industry. We may not see this on the street quite yet, but every bit of research that goes into that becomes a reality. And when people see these colors, again, they want to see it in other applications as well. So there's a broad range of color and industry application. And I'm always telling my audiences, you've got to look at the macro picture. Don't discount what is happening in upholstery, what is happening in floors, what is happening in fashion and beauty, as I mentioned, because they're all being highly researched, and it does affect what the consumer sees and what they are looking for. And here is the treatment of that metallic used in a contract environment, used around these particular vignettes. Really exciting look. So metallics really are continuing on. They are not going away. At the same time, we know, as I mentioned, that there's always those people who lean to the neutral colors, the safe colors. But the difference now is not so much in the color, but in the texture and in the usage of the texture to give it some interest so that, you know, not everybody's going to buy that chair on the right. But the point is you put that in a display and it stops traffic. People have to stop and look. Even though it's a neutral color, it's the design that catches the eye. And if any of you are involved in having to put things out at retail level or wholesale level where you want to capture the consumer's eye or an exhibitor's booth, if you're using much of the same color, the eye glosses over it. The eye becomes bored. So as a result, you have to use accessories of some kind, even if it's in the signage, that will draw the eye. And they may very well wind up buying a neutral color again, but it's just like the showroom analogy for cars. You hear that purple cars are big next season. You go in, you look at it, and you say, well, it's a good-looking color, but I don't know. I think I'm going to buy the white after all. It's more practical, and so you buy the white car. But you read about that purple car in that particular showroom, and that's what makes you go to that website or to that showroom, even though you're not overtly aware that you're thinking about buying a purple car. So color is definitely what they call a loss leader. And here we have more examples of the neutral colors. In addition to the neutrals are the earth tones, really, really strong. You heard me talk about terracotta last year and the year before that. It's getting even deeper and more luscious in some browner tones. Green is always important, and as I'm always urging people to think of green as a neutral color. We certainly see that in our sagey greens. We've seen it in carpeting. We've seen it in paint. We've seen it in tile treatments. Green has been out there for several years, and it is not going away. Again, ecological, another E word, environmental, important. As a result, we are going to continue to see the earthy colors and the colors that speak to the environment. We also know that there are key words that we're hearing a lot of: unadulterated, organic, natural. Important words, and you need to use ramifications of those colors to let people know you understand that. Now this I want to show you because this is a recycled plastic that weaves together performance and what we call social responsibility. That people are more aware and they do want to be more socially responsible, and they're also fascinated by the fact that this is a speaker with these colors on it and it's made out of recycled plastics. So it's a feel-good kind of thing. Here I bought something that could have wound up in a landfill, and yet it makes for an attractive speaker that I can use as well. Now here's another important point. We know that skilled hands find what we call an artisanal touch that are added to synthetics as the line between handmade and synthetic is blurring. And the reason for that is that a lot of synthetics are being recycled now. So we might call them synthetic, but they're being used in a good way. So synthetic is not necessarily a bad word anymore if you think of it as being a product of recycling. And that's an important point to remember. And now back to the E words with the ever relevant and necessary word eat that we see here. In the hospitality sector, incorporating food, including a creative theme, is all important. And we certainly see that in this restaurant with the message food. With a growing acceptance of plant-based foods that are referred to as honest food, consisting largely of healthy greens and earth tones, we go to the opposite extreme, and this you can blame on Bridgerton. Some of these tea room party themes, very, very important now, and hospitality is being affected because often people will rent spaces within restaurants. We see the beautiful pastels, as I said, the tea party pastels that are serving another part of the public, and we need to be aware of that. At the same time, again, back in hospitality, tablescaping, it's a word that's been around for a few years, gaining even more prominence. Here we see it being written up in a book by Bugsy Drake. She gets a lot of attention. She has a show on TV. The flamingo pattern being used in those brilliant colors. So one extreme to the other, which will lead us to our 7 palettes. There's always a need for black and white. Certainly in your industry, we know that. It's definitely a classic. So we look at newer treatments of the black and white. Again, a lot of it is in the patterning so that it doesn't look same old, same old. In addition to that, we are continuing to see it in contract as well as residential. I make a big point of that. And much of that is coming from the fashion and beauty industry. It's where we often find the outstanding accent colors. So it's not just about black and white, but we have to know, well, what are the hot accent colors that are being used with the black and white that are going to make it look a little fresher? And here is an example taken right out of fashion, and it is that bold red. Now, you might say, well, red's not that new with black and white. But we know that we've gone through different periods, black and white and gray, black and white and yellow, black and white and pink. But we are definitely back to the reds. And if you watch the Academy Awards, You notice how many red gowns are being worn. As an attention getter, you just can't beat red. So with your black and white, the infusion of red being used in a window display, in interiors, they are top choice for an accent color. But an interesting addition to this is an extension in the fashion industry that is taking on in other areas, which is kind of unexpected, is the use of bottle green with the black and white, as well as pink with black and white. That was big a few years ago when millennial pink first came out, and it's back again. The black, the white, and the pink being used together. Now, as a little bit of an FYI, Pantone does, and I do this for them every season, fashion report, and this is a 22-23 fashion report. Again, even if you're not in the fashion field, it's available for you on the Pantone site. There's no charge for it. We pick out the 10 top colors and the 4 most important neutral tones and basic tones. Now, that doesn't mean it's necessarily going to spread to other industries, but it does give you an indication of where fashion is going and something to look at to bear that in mind. So it's a coming attraction. Now, before we get into the actual palettes, I do want to take a few minutes to talk about the Pantone Color of the Year for a particular reason. We found that when a color combination, like we did last year with the yellow and gray, gets a lot of attention, it doesn't disappear at the end of the year. It means that consumers and customers have gotten more accustomed to it. If they bought it in a more expensive application, like carpeting, and they like the idea of using the yellow accent with the gray carpet, it has a holdover effect, which means that it has gained consumer acceptance in the year before. You can expect that it's going to have some vitality in the following year or two that comes after it. So don't expect the yellow and the gray to fall off the map, because they won't. And I want to give you a little bit of history about the Color of the Year, because people are always interested in how we came about the Color of the Year and what it's about. Cerulean blue was the color that I had named for Pantone in 1999. And that's because there was a lot of concern about the new millennium, or where the clock's going to stop. Remember all of that talk? The clocks are going to stop, and consumers were going to, computers were going to go crazy. People were very concerned. They were excited about a new millennium, but at the same time, they were a little nervous. So we needed to give them a color that was kind of calming, and we came up with cerulean blue. Little did we know how important that color would become in the next couple of ensuing years in calming people in the events of the early 2000s. And so each year we have named a color of the year. And what it does is to start a conversation. That's what it's all about. In my work with Pantone and my own work in consulting, if you can get people talking about color, you get to understand how they feel about it, and that makes for a better relationship with your ultimate consumer, because they know that you're listening and you understand them better, and you want to give them what is going to be pleasing to them. So starting that conversation is what the Color of the Year is all about. And I'm just showing you some examples of the Color of the Year this year, which was to bring a novel perspective. So we actually invented a new color for Pantone. The most reliable and trusted of the color families in all is blue. Statistics tell us that. It's that way every year. And so we came up with this new blue, gave us a more promising perspective. Very Perry is a color that really looks forward to the future in a new light. And here is a sample from Artec House in New York. They created an intensive, immersive experience in New York with the periwinkle blue, which was really quite exciting. And in the digital art world, the color was put into motion with a dramatic work exhibited by Polygon 80. It's this dynamic blue with a violet-red undertone. Now, that's important to understand. It's not your usual cool, calming blue. There's a little bit of excitement because of that warm red undertone. And that's what we wanted to do with the blue, was to add a little bit of excitement. So you have the mother color, which is calming. Everybody understands that. But we wanted to add a bit of excitement to the color to give people a more energetic outlook. And here are some examples of where we are seeing the color being used in many different applications in many industries. And the one that I think is the most exciting to me is in this custom car, because it shows the color is really very pervasive in very high-end, expensive custom car to the opposite extreme of a recreational bike. So same color, very different usage. Here we see it in the wellness industry, and again in the beauty industry, and also in menswear. Believe it or not, for the non-believers, the guy sitting out there says, oh, I'm not so sure about that color. Well, here it is, particularly for the younger consumer whose eye then becomes accustomed to it, the male consumer, and they don't have all of the prejudices that maybe the older generation has about color. They're more open to the usage of a color. And we're also seeing it in high-end fashion, to daytime casual, as well as in fashion accessories. In interior design and home furnishings, the color is really outstanding. Now, to see it in a permanent fixture like this, the wash basin is really quite amazing and quite beautiful. Very dramatic, very different. Not going to be for every customer out there, but again, you know about this. It's a subject you can talk about. Your customer might wind up buying that white sink all over again, but at least it makes you more knowledgeable about what is out there. Couple more examples, and this I have to show you in full disclosure. This is my new bedroom color. I recently moved from the Northwest to the Southwest. Big change. I'm living in Tucson now. And anybody here from Tucson? Anybody out there from Tucson? No Tucsonites. Okay. Phoenix? Anybody from Phoenix? No, oh my goodness, Arizona isn't well represented here today at all. And there's my best accessory. That's my little multi-poo sitting on the periwinkle bedspread, and the walls are also periwinkle, as well as the color in the shades. It is a fabulous color to use in a bedroom. I use it in the Northwest as well. It is one of those colors that is far more versatile than you might think it is. And here are all the different applications. We can see it in traditional. Here we see it a little bit boho. Here we see it in more contemporary. And in this one, which I thought was fabulous, an eclectic mix of both traditional and modern. So it is one of those colors that is far more usable than people think it is. When they start to use it, they really discover they have some fun because it has both warm and cool components in it, which makes it a much more versatile color, particularly using it with a lot of other colors. And this, I thought, was an interesting application on the wall, using it with a deepened tone next to it. Of course, the ultimate source of inspiration for the color of the year comes from nature. It has to. And we see it's gorgeously used in nature, and what could be more gorgeous than, again, another great escape picture with a periwinkle blue in the sky. So that's a little bit of a story as to why we landed on using periwinkle, very peri. Okay, so long promised, I'm going to end with the 7 palettes of color. And this is what you are having the handout on the app. But do pay attention to the visuals, because the visuals really give you the color story. I know it's tempting to want to read on your phone, but looking at the visuals on big screen really gives you a much clearer picture. Now, the first one that I talked about was the Pantone View Home, and this comes from the Pantone View Home forecast. Everything I'm showing you now is included, the 7 palettes, and many of the pictures are included in the Pantone View Home forecast for 22-23. So here we go with Tropic Refresh. Sunlit Yellow, Coral, Peachy Pink, and floral-inspired orange add a balancing warmth. Now, that's kind of an overview. Now, we know that semi-tropical colors often fall into these ranges, but it's important to know how you make it a little different than what has been seen before that will tweak the customer's eye. And here is another example of how these colors are being used together. Really a gorgeous combination of color. And the next palette is called Epic Tales. Remember, I talked about people escaping into movies. Epic Tales, this is the opposite extreme. They often explore alternate realities, fantasy, sci-fi, well known to consumers today because of the epic films, gaming, books, so much that talks to this darker side of the spectrum. And so you do see the deeper colors and some muted midtones. Again, the brightest color used with this, with the deeper colors, is the red. So that's a color to pay attention to. A lot of that hammered look in the jewelry that you're seeing here, hammered steel, darkened patinas that are coming out of that influence of the epic films. And here is yet another example. I thought this picture of the woman was wonderful, tattooed necklace. She looks like something out of medieval times, but there's a very modern necklace that's drawn around her neck. And some other applications of those deeper colors and the metallics. You will definitely see the metallics included. And so you're seeing the greens, the port wine, the black and silvers, shadowy kinds of colors, but you see that stained glass red that is coming through. All right, I had talked about honesty as a key word. This is for those people who say, well, yeah, all those brights and darks are okay, but I still look at the neutrals first. So we need to do a palette, but we need to kind of reinvent it a bit to catch their eye. These are colors that are conducive of the real world and the need of many consumers today for honest, natural, unadulterated, organic. These are their key words, suggesting health and responsibility to the Earth's resources. Included are timeless neutrals of creamy white, grade tones that continue the dialogue with sustainability, what a product is made of and how long it will last. But along with the neutrals, you're getting your nourishing vegetal yellow greens offset by soft and subtle blue-green. Now, the difference for next year is that you often see the blues and the blue-greens and the greens used in a separate palette by themselves, but you're seeing more of an integration of that now with your neutral colors, particularly that more acidic kind of yellow-green. It's not going away. It's been around for several years, and when people get accustomed to it, even though it was never one of the top colors that people preferred in our consumer studies, over the years, we saw it change gradually, year after year after year, where people were much more accepting of the yellow greens. Now, especially with the whole environmental movement, because greens are important to that, and also because we got accustomed to seeing more of those yellow greens, now we are seeing them combined with neutrals, and they're not at the bottom of the heap anymore. They've really climbed up on our consumer studies as to preferred colors. Next is a palette called Earthbound, and this is to quote directly from the Pantone View Home Forecast book. The confined mind longs to travel. Fingertips long to touch something other than screens. That's an interesting expression. Tactical, unique product which tells a story, can provide a sense of intimacy and narrative that we all need in these times. The colors include dusted earth tones, including a muted pink. Now, again, that is an ongoing influence of pink. Ever since the millennial pink hit a few years ago, we have seen pink in some variation in residential, in contract, not just in fashion. So we can't ignore it. If it's a muted, dusty pink, it comes across to many consumers as a neutral color. So we can't ignore the introduction of that color. So earthy colors, we're accustomed to what earthy colors generally are, but the introduction of that pink and also that Dijon-y kind of mustardy yellow has become a favorite, and it adds a note of sophistication to an earthy palette that might start to look a little tired if you don't do something to give it a little bit of pop. So that is what Earthbound is all about. And here is another image showing you some of the other colors in the Earthbound. Next is called Unexpected Reality. And this is really a fun palette because this one has some brightness in it, but again, it has some softness at the same time. It's called a juxtaposition of seeming opposites. I talked about opposites, where delicate meets bright and vaporous pastels like pale pink, blue, peach, and gossamer green. They can stand on their own, or they can be combined. Look at the wall covering that is used here. Beautiful combination of unexpected colors being used together. And here is another example of some of the vibrancy, but a combination that is a little bit off-center, and yet these are gaining more prominence, particularly with younger consumers who don't want to do same old, same old. They want to see something that's a little different, and here's a palette that plays to that. Our artisanal or artisan invention is the next palette. You heard me talk about the ingenuity of skilled craftspeople who are transforming glass. They're transforming whatever is broken that needs to be fixed into something new. And the palette that really helps to bring that out is a palette that includes a denim-y kind of blue, a deeper denim-y blue. 3 shades of blue actually are in this palette. And also a robust deeper red, a mauvey orchid tone. And I think that's really interesting. Again, getting into that pinky orchid cast, which is the way to add newness to your palettes and make it seem very fresh. And here is another example of that. I mentioned the reworked denim on the right-hand side, a bit of a boho influence in this palette, important as we go forward. Okay, and the last one is called Intoxicants, and this is definitely all about the brights. This is definitely playing to the whole digital aspect of color. These are profuse and lively, what I call punctuation marks of vivid color. There's a bit of mystery that's reflected in the use of purple, magenta, and violet, but the overwhelming intensity is shown in the presence of other technicolor tinged red, green, orange, and electric blue. So, interesting combination of colors, a lot of it lit up by metallic undercurrents, and it adds a bit of intrigue to the palette. This is going to remain an important indicator for the future. But as I said earlier in the talk, I am very well aware that some of you are in industries where you simply cannot show this many bright colors. It's just not going to work. But if you're doing a lot of neutrals, and they are being done in your industry, please be aware that you've got to do something to catch the consumer's eye. If you don't get them to stop and look, even on your websites, they're going to go right by it because the eye is bored by the neutrality. So that's where color can really come into play, not necessarily in the product itself, but what you use around it. Even if it's in retail display, use some colored glass, something that's going to make the eye stop, pay attention, and hopefully ultimately buy your product. Okay, that brings me to the end of my talk, and I'm going to suggest that if anybody has questions, you come up to the front and ask me the questions because I can get a little bit more background about you while I'm listening to your questions rather than taking them from the audience. So we'll do that a little differently today. Just come up front and we'll have a conversation. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it and you've left with some good information that's going to be valuable to you. Thank you.